The hydrangeas were in full bloom, the mockingbirds were serenading the morning, and my oversized pug, Winston, was snoring contentedly at my feet. Life was, dare I say, peaceful. A little too peaceful, perhaps. You see, living in a planned community came with a Faustian bargain, tranquility in exchange for enduring the whims of the Hawthorne Heights Homeowners Association. Now, I'm not one to complain about minor inconveniences. The occasional passive-aggressive email about the precise shade of beige my mailbox should be fine. The thinly veiled threats about my unruly garden gnome collection. Annoying, but manageable. But lately, the HOA's reach had been extending further, their demands becoming more peculiar. Little did I know, their escalating absurdity was merely a prelude to the full-blown symphony of chaos that was about to erupt, a performance starring Karen and featuring a very special guest appearance by my newly installed tire shredders. The escalating HOA nonsense, coupled with a few unsettling late-night drive-bys, mostly teenagers, I suspect, but still, prompted the gate installation. It wasn't just about aesthetics, though the wrought iron did complement the hydrangeas nicely. It was about security, about creating a clear boundary. And yes, about sending a message. Now, before you jump to conclusions, I did my due diligence. Permits were obtained, property lines were meticulously surveyed, and the HOA's, surprisingly vague, regulations regarding gates were carefully scrutinized. The gate itself was perfectly legal. What wasn't explicitly mentioned in the HOA rulebook, however, were the strategically placed, completely within my property line, tire shredders. Consider them a robust deterrent to unwanted vehicular traffic. A silent, metallic guardian of my hard-won peace. The tranquility lasted all of 2 weeks. I discovered the damage on a Tuesday morning, while taking Winston for his constitutional. The wrought iron, once a symbol of my defiance, was now twisted and mangled, a grotesque parody of its former self. One of the support posts was completely snapped, leaving the gate hanging at an awkward angle. My blood ran cold. There was no mistaking it, this wasn't accidental. A car, or perhaps a very determined SUV, had clearly rammed into it. My immediate suspicion, naturally, fell on the HOA. Who else would have the audacity, the sheer unadulterated gall, to intentionally damage my property? I envisioned a clandestine meeting, a PowerPoint presentation outlining operation, gate removal, and a unanimous vote fueled by simmering resentment over my gnome collection. The bastards! As I stood there, fuming and plotting my revenge, garden gnomes strategically placed in the HOA president's swimming pool, perhaps, a gleaming white Escalade pulled into what remained of my driveway. And from it emerged Karen. Now, this wasn't just any Karen. This was the Karen of Hawthorne Heights, a legend whispered in hushed tones at neighborhood barbecues. The Architectural Control Committee chair. The queen bee of complaints. The woman who once filed a formal grievance because my recycling bin was off beige by 0.3 shades. She strode towards me, radiating self-importance, her perfectly coiffed blonde bob bouncing with each step. I needed to get through, she declared, as if this explained everything. There was an urgent matter regarding Mrs. Henderson's petunias, and your driveway provided the most direct access. Karen, I said, trying to maintain a semblance of calm, with all due respect, that gate cost me a considerable amount of money. It's also on my property. And you rammed it. Do you understand that you've trespassed and caused significant damage? She scoffed. Trespassed? Darling, this whole community is practically common land. And besides, I'm on official HOA business. Her voice began to rise. Those petunias were displaying an unacceptable level of wilting. Immediate intervention was required. I pointed to the mangled remains of the gate. Urgent petunia intervention or not, you can't just destroy private property. I have permits, Karen. I followed the rules. You, on the other hand. My voice trailed off, because at that precise moment, a sound like 1,000 angry squirrels chewing on aluminum cans filled the air. The sound intensified, becoming a cacophony of tearing rubber and grinding metal. Karen's eyes widened in horror as her Escalade began to sink, ever so slightly, towards the earth. The pristine white paint job was now being decorated with long, black streaks of shredded tire. The tire shredders were doing their job with ruthless efficiency. One by one, Karen's tires succumbed to their metallic embrace. The Escalade, once a symbol of her HOA power, was now a crippled beast, listing precariously in my driveway. A cloud of acrid smoke filled the air, mingling with the sweet scent of hydrangeas and the metallic tang of destruction. It was a beautiful, terrible sight to behold. The horrified silence was short-lived. It shattered with a shriek that could curdle milk. "What have you done?" Karen screamed, pointing a manicured finger at the crippled Escalade. "My tires. My brand new tires. You're going to pay for this. I'll sue you. I'll sue you for everything you've got." The accusations flew thick and fast, a torrent of outrage directed squarely at me. I was a menace to the community, a danger to society, a vandal, a tire shredder enthusiast. She demanded immediate compensation for the damage, threatening to call her lawyer, the HOA, and possibly the governor. The wilting petunias, it seemed, were momentarily forgotten in the face of her vehicular catastrophe. I let her rant, letting the steam dissipate like the smoke from her ruined tires. When she finally paused for breath, I calmly walked back into the house and returned with a folder. "Karen," I said, my voice even, "let's review a few things, shall we?" I presented the gate permit, stamped and approved by the city. Then, I unfurled a copy of the official property survey, clearly delineating the boundaries of my land. Finally, I pointed to the small, but clearly visible, warning signs I'd strategically placed along the driveway: "Caution, tire disablement devices in use." Okay, maybe I embellished the wording slightly. The signs were there. Hard to miss. "Trespassing," I stated, "damage to private property. And willful disregard of posted warnings. I believe the ball is now in your court." The color drained from Karen's face. The fire in her eyes flickered, replaced by a dawning realization that she might have overstepped. The legal threats evaporated as quickly as they'd appeared. A new tactic was deployed: feigned innocence. "Oh, dear," she said, her voice suddenly meek. "I didn't see the signs. They must have been obscured by the petunias." Then came the appeal to sympathy. "My back. I think I hurt my back when the car lurched. I might need to go to the hospital." Finally, the backtracking. "Perhaps," she stammered, "perhaps there was another way to get to Mrs. Henderson's petunias. Maybe this was all a misunderstanding." But the mangled gate, the shredded tires, and the smug look on my face told a different story. "I'm calling the police," I announced, pulling out my phone. That was the final straw. Karen's desperation ratcheted up another notch. She pleaded, she begged, she even offered to personally prune my hydrangeas for a year. Anything to avoid the authorities. Ignoring her increasingly frantic pleas, I dialed 911. While waiting for the police to arrive, I meticulously documented the scene: photos of the mangled gate, close-ups of the shredded tires, and even a short video of Karen's Escalade listing like a drunken sailor. Evidence, I knew, would be crucial. Karen, meanwhile, was reduced to a whimpering mess, pacing back and forth and muttering about petunias and property lines. The flashing lights of the police cruiser cut through the suburban tranquility. 2 officers emerged, their expressions a mixture of amusement and professional concern. I explained the situation, presenting my evidence: the permits, the survey, the photos, the video, and the still whimpering Karen. Karen, seizing her opportunity, launched into a revised version of events, complete with crocodile tears and exaggerated claims of injury. She claimed she'd been forced to drive through the gate due to a life-threatening petunia emergency, and that the tire shredders were a malicious trap designed to harm innocent passers-by. The officers listened patiently, occasionally glancing at each other with thinly veiled skepticism. After what felt like an eternity of questioning and evidence gathering, the officers made their decision. Karen, much to my satisfaction, was issued a citation for trespassing and property damage. While she wasn't arrested, the citation carried a hefty fine and the potential for further legal action. As they led her away, to arrange for a tow truck, I presumed, a wave of pure, unadulterated satisfaction washed over me. Finally, Karen was being held accountable for her actions. The queen bee of complaints had finally been stung. The world, for a brief, glorious moment, felt just. Interestingly, the HOA remained conspicuously silent throughout the entire ordeal. No official statement, no emergency board meeting, not even a passive-aggressive email about maintaining community standards during times of crisis. It was as if Karen's actions were so egregious, so utterly indefensible, that even they couldn't condone them. I suspect there was a frantic scramble behind the scenes, a desperate attempt to distance themselves from the unfolding disaster. After all, publicly supporting someone who destroyed private property and then blamed it on wilting petunias wasn't exactly a great PR move. Perhaps, I mused, this was the beginning of the end for Karen's reign of terror within Hawthorne Heights. The citation was just the beginning. The real battle, I knew, was yet to come. There were insurance claims to file, legal consultations to schedule, and a very expensive gate to repair. I anticipated a protracted back and forth with Karen's insurance company, possibly even a lawsuit. And then there was the issue of my tires, should Karen decide to retaliate. I contacted my lawyer and started gathering quotes for a reinforced, Karen-proof, gate. The whole affair was shaping up to be a costly and time-consuming headache. But, I reminded myself, it was a headache worth enduring. Justice, even the small, suburban variety, rarely comes cheap. So, what did I learn from this suburban saga? Firstly, never underestimate the lengths an HOA Karen will go to in the name of wilting petunias. Secondly, always obtain the proper permits. And thirdly, standing up to bullies, even if it means a protracted legal battle and a damaged gate, is always worth it. As for the tire shredders, well, let's just say they proved to be a remarkably effective deterrent. Disclaimer: always check local regulations regarding the legality of such devices. I am not a lawyer, and this is not legal advice. Don't be a Karen. And while the HOA may still send me passive-aggressive emails about my garden gnomes, I now face them with a newfound sense of confidence. After all, I'm the one with the tire shredders.